Brought to you by Ayoko, Africa's leading integrated technology services company. It's time for Tech Talk. Now, in the 2026-27 financial year, the SABC is expected to make its first profit in 5 years. This as the embattled state broadcaster's efforts around monetizing its digital platforms is bearing fruit. Ahead of guidance, the SABC now has close to 2 million online streamers. Is the digital platform revenue stream a sustainable one? Business Day's Mudiwa Gavaza joins us with his analysis of digital platforms, its commercialization and profitability. Mudiwa, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Now, SABC managing to triple its user base in less than a year. That's massive, right? But the big question here is how have they managed going about monetizing that SABC Plus app?
So when it comes to SABC Plus, that's obviously the SABC's streaming platform. When it comes to monetizing at the moment, they told us, I spoke to their CFO just the other day, their acting CFO, and you're talking about advertising. That is primarily the way they're monetizing that platform at the moment, because like any other SABC service in South Africa, it's not a paid-for platform like what we see with Netflix, Amazon, Showmax, and the others. So primarily at the moment, it is an advertising-driven model, and it follows the rest of the SABC's business, because advertising is the SABC's biggest earner across radio and TV as well.
And when I was thinking about the SABC Plus app, I was also likening it to the likes of a Disney Plus, just on a content basis. They both have that nostalgic type of content. One can watch shows they watched while growing up, and also, I guess, stream your news and what's playing out on the channel at that moment.
They do, but what I'd say is quite unique about SABC Plus is the fact that it's not necessarily just video on demand. It does have that element, but it's more live broadcast, but online. I don't know if what makes sense. If we look at it in a DSTV sense, DSTV distinguishes between video on demand, which is what they have on Showmax, versus live streaming, which they have on DSTV Stream. But to your point around Disney, we do see that a lot of the players are actually now mixing these formats and models, because just last week Disney introduced a live component to the Disney Plus app, especially for us here in Africa. Anyone who's logged into Disney Plus recently in South Africa will see that we now have ESPN. There are now 2 ESPN channels that are available, and they're broadcasting 24 hours a day. And we do see from the likes of Netflix that they are also introducing a live element. And if you look at Showmax, they are streaming, at least on a mobile device, they're streaming sports channels live. So we do have that mixing that is coming up. We no longer have a situation where you have just one model. You're almost having to operate across.
And that would make sense, to have both streaming and video on demand on one platform. And I want to get your insight on the SABC's funding model, which has been constantly criticized, Mudiwa. Now, revenue, as you mentioned, comes through mostly from advertising. There's also sponsorships, as well as license fees that a lot of South Africans don't pay, right? Now, the public broadcaster is very squeezed when it comes to advertising, competing with other TV channels, and also competing with online platforms. With that being said, and the lost revenue we are seeing from the TV licensing front, is this revenue model proving to be sustainable? I mean, we look at the numbers and one can say no.
I think for now, one of the things that was quite interesting in our conversation with the acting CFO of the SABC, he mentioned that SABC is the most commercially driven public broadcaster in the world. And what that means is, in most instances, a public broadcaster gets the majority of their revenue or a significant chunk of it from the state because
Okay.
it's a state-run entity.
Mm-hmm.
But in the case of the SABC, and it surprised me even, they only get 3% of their budget from the state or government, and that will put you in the ballpark of roughly 2 to 300 million rand or so, because in the last financial year, they made around 5.5 billion. So 3% of that amount is coming from the government. And then you have the advertising piece. That's the biggest piece that they have to compete with. And then you've got your licenses, which is primarily TV licenses. We know that when it comes to TV licenses, South Africans are notorious
Mm-hmm.
for not, paying these amounts. In fact, in the release that they put out earlier this week, the SABC was talking about how it was grateful, that the people that have paid TV licenses had paid their TV licenses. So you can see how dire of a situation it is on that end. And then obviously you've got the sponsorship. So for now, it does seem as if it is I don't know what word to use, but it is probably a sustainable way that they are doing. There
Mm-hmm.
are other opportunities, such as maybe monetizing their archives, because
Yes.
SABC have the biggest archives in the country as well as in Africa as well. And I do know that they have deals in place where they do allow people, to access, some of those services. So we do see a situation where the funding of the SABC has been brought into question a little
Mm,
bit, but they have been able to find their way, around everything. And if you actually think about it, the fact that as a public broadcaster, you're able to fund 97% of your budget,
yeah, big feat.
of your own effort, there does need to be commendation that's given there. Unfortunately, they do find themselves in a loss-making position,
Mm,
250 million odd. That's the loss that they had as of March 2025. So they are in a loss-making position, but they do predict that in the next year or so they will make their first profit in quite a few years.
mm. And there's been a growing debate around reimagining the SABC's mandate to make it more sustainable. We do know that there's delays around the SABC bill, and also just, I guess, sourcing content in South Africa's 11 official languages can also prove to be, quite expensive. Sifting through those financials, an investment in content is also one of the biggest expenses.
Yes. So when it comes to what their expense base looks like, they've got three main items that are driving those costs. They've got labor, which is their biggest component. Based off of the calculation we were able to do, that's a huge amount that is just coming from the labor portion. And then I believe it's about 35% or so, is just the labor. And then you've got the licensing, and then you've also got the content that also needs to be spoken about. So the SABC's funding model is a bit tough,
Mm,
but they have been able to work themselves. So the other thing to think about is the fact that when you look at their licensing fees, they have been able to work around getting the licensing for international content, their own productions, and then the other one that they're spending quite a bit of money on is that public mandate. You've got 2.1 billion rand that is being spent on broadcasting, not in 11 languages, but actually 16,
mm.
and they have to have a presence across every single province, every single major city. So that's how you then end up with that mandate costing as much as it does.
All right, let's leave it there. Mudiwa, thanks so much for your time and sharing your insights with us this afternoon. That was Business Days, Mudiwa Gavaza. you by IOCO, Africa's leading integrated technology services company.